Hey, Blackie, go serve! The words cracked through the marble atrium like glass shattering against stone. They weren't whispered. They weren't hidden. They were thrown across the gala floor with the confidence of people who thought their wealth excused cruelty. 5 figures stood together, polished tuxedos, satin gowns, glasses of champagne tilted casually in manicured hands. Their laughter rose in chorus, practiced, theatrical. The blonde woman in the center pointed, her diamonds catching the chandelier's glow. To her, it was a performance. To everyone else, it was humiliation disguised as humor. The target of their mockery, a young black woman in a simple yet striking yellow dress, didn't even turn her head. She held her phone to her ear, curls cascading over her shoulders, her stride measured, steady. A younger man in the group leaned forward, smirk curling. "Wrong door, sweetheart. Staff entrance is down the hall." Their laughter rippled out again, bouncing off the marble pillars. At the edges of the room, heads began to turn. Some guests frowned. Others looked away, too practiced in ignoring injustice to break the rhythm of their evening. But the young woman's silence cut deeper than any rebuttal. She adjusted the phone slightly, her gaze anchored somewhere far beyond them. Whoever was on the other end of the call, her words came cool, deliberate. "Dad, cancel the $750 million deal now." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. The matriarch's grin faltered for half a second, as if she'd heard the number and wondered. But pride drowned curiosity. "She's bluffing," she muttered, loud enough for those around her to hear. "Girls like that don't make calls that matter." Ugh. A waiter froze near the back, tray trembling slightly in his grip. His eyes darted from the group to the woman in yellow, and instinct pulled his phone into his palm. A red recording light flicked on. He knew what he was seeing. He knew the weight of this moment. The young woman paused mid-step, not from hesitation, from choice. She raised her chin, and for a beat the room felt smaller, tighter. The air no longer belonged to the ones laughing. It belonged to her. She spoke again, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. "Log every word, timestamp every gesture. This will not be forgotten." The family's laughter softened, fractured. The joke was no longer safe. What began as entertainment was turning into evidence. And in the silence that followed, the balance of power started to shift, though only she knew how completely it was about to collapse. The laughter didn't stop, it sharpened. One of the younger men in the billionaire family raised his glass, eyes glinting with cruelty. "Did you hear that? She thinks her phone call matters. Maybe she's ordering takeout." His friends howled. The blonde matriarch leaned into his shoulder, chuckling as if the whole gala existed for their amusement. Around them, the room began to fracture. Some guests returned to their meals, unwilling to interfere. Others whispered, discomfort crawling across their faces. A violinist in the corner missed a note, his bow stuttering on the strings, then recovered quickly as if nothing had happened. But the tremor had already spread. The woman in yellow kept walking, her phone still pressed to her ear, every step deliberate. She didn't break stride when the man in the navy tuxedo stepped into her path, blocking her like a gatekeeper. His smile was wide, but his tone cut sharp. "This section is reserved for patrons. Don't embarrass yourself further. There are eyes everywhere." He gestured toward the crowd, his hand sweeping like he was presenting her shame as tonight's entertainment. The young woman met his stare for the first time. Her silence was heavier than any retort. Then she spoke low, steady, to the phone, not to him. "They've escalated. Keep recording." The waiter in the corner, the one with the trembling tray, shifted his phone higher, capturing every word, every gesture. His eyes burned with a quiet conviction. Someone had to document this. The blonde matriarch scoffed. "Look at her. She thinks she's untouchable. I've seen this before, wannabes who sneak in, hoping to brush shoulders with real money. Security will handle her." But her voice cracked at the edges. The younger woman in white, smiling too wide, desperate to impress the group, stepped forward. She reached out, fingers grazing the sleeve of the yellow dress, as if to physically escort her away. "Sweetheart, this isn't your show. Let us save you the embarrassment. Go before you get thrown out." Gasps rose, sharp and unfiltered. A man at the far table muttered under his breath, "That's too far." His companion nodded, gripping her wineglass tighter. The woman in yellow didn't recoil. She simply shifted the phone to her other hand and spoke clearly enough for the hall to hear. Timestamp, physical contact attempted. Note the witness reactions. The words weren't defensive. They were clinical, logged. As if this was no longer a party, it was evidence gathering in real time. The family laughed again, but it was thinner now, edges frayed by the eyes turning toward them. The matriarch hissed to her group, "Ignore her. She's no one. She'll be gone in minutes." Yet for the first time, uncertainty flickered in their posture. And the young woman in yellow, unshaken, composed, kept walking forward, her presence stretching like a shadow across the hall, while the storm they had summoned began to close in on them instead. The mockery didn't fade, it ignited. The elder man in the group, silver hair swept back, raised his voice above the hum of the gala. "Enough of this charade. She's a distraction. Look at her dress, no donor would wear that. She's a fraud." He tipped his champagne glass toward her as if she were nothing more than a punchline delivered for his table alone. The laughter that followed was louder, harsher, calculated to echo. A few guests near the back gasped openly. A woman clutching a clutch purse whispered, "This is ugly," her voice trembling with secondhand shame. The woman in yellow stopped mid-stride. For the first time, she faced them directly. Her phone still pressed to her ear, her eyes scanned the group like a surgeon assessing a wound. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Escalation noted. Threats acknowledged. The blonde matriarch stepped forward, emboldened by the spotlight. Her smile was razor-thin. "You'll leave now, or we'll make sure you never attend another event in this city. Girls like you don't belong at tables like these." That word "girls" landed like a lash. The waiter's phone light glowed brighter, his camera now openly trained on the exchange. Around him, murmurs swelled. A young couple at a corner table leaned forward, whispering, "She's handling this better than anyone else in the room." But the family pressed harder. The man in the navy tuxedo smirked. "Maybe she thought she could sit with us because of charity. Maybe she confused this gala with a soup kitchen." Laughter erupted again, but it was uneven this time, forced, brittle. A violin screeched off note, and this time the mistake wasn't covered. The music faltered, then stopped. Silence expanded, heavy and unforgiving. The woman in yellow lifted her chin. Her voice was clear, clipped, almost surgical. Timestamp, verbal slur, racially charged, documented. The matriarch's smile faltered, her eyes darting briefly toward the growing audience. Dozens of phones now pointed their way, blinking red lights like an army of witnesses. The power dynamic shifted with every second of silence that followed. "Still, pride is louder than fear," she scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Record all you want. No one cares what she says. Power doesn't bend to theatrics." But the room knew better. Guests shifted in their chairs, some standing, some whispering to one another. The tide was moving, slow but unstoppable. The young woman in yellow turned slightly, her gaze sweeping the hall. Her phone never lowered, her posture unshaken. And in that moment, it became clear. She wasn't just enduring their ridicule. She was building a record, brick by brick, word by word, in front of witnesses too many to silence. The storm wasn't coming. It had already arrived. The silence after the matriarch's last insult was different. It wasn't empty. It was charged. From the corner of the hall, a voice cut through the air, uncertain at first, then firm. She showed her ticket when she entered. "I saw it. She belongs here." All heads turned. It was the young waiter, the one who had been recording from the start. His tray was gone, his phone raised high, camera pointed without shame. His words cracked the facade, like a fissure racing through glass. Gasps rippled across the tables. A woman in a red gown stood halfway up, her voice trembling but resolute. "This isn't right. You don't get to treat someone like that because of how they look." The billionaire family turned sharply, their performance slipping. The silver-haired patriarch's jaw tightened, his voice thick with fury. "Sit down. You're out of line. This is a private matter." But the crowd was no longer still. Whispers surged, chairs scraped, dozens of phones lifted into the air like witnesses swearing an oath. The woman in yellow remained steady, her phone still at her ear. Her voice came low, controlled. First witness testimony logged, independent confirmation recorded. Her calmness was disarming, infuriating. The younger man in the navy tuxedo tried to seize control, stepping forward with mock authority. She's lying, she's a scam. Probably forged that ticket just to sneak in. A new voice rose, this one from the second row of tables. A middle-aged guest, his face flushed with anger. Number, I saw security scan her pass myself. It went green. Murmurs grew louder. The narrative was cracking, collapsing under its own weight. The matriarch snapped, her voice shrill now. You people don't know who we are. This is our circle. We decide who belongs. But her certainty sounded hollow against the swelling tide of dissent. The woman in yellow finally moved. She lowered the phone slightly, her gaze sweeping across the hall, meeting the eyes of strangers who were no longer strangers. Allies were rising from silence. Her words, though quiet, carried like a verdict. Second testimony confirmed. Crowd awareness spreading. The matriarch's hand trembled against her glass. For the first time, fear bled into her expression. The family's laughter was gone, replaced by whispers between clenched jaws. They hadn't lost control of a moment. They had lost control of the room. And as the weight of witnesses pressed in from every side, it became clear this was no longer their show. It was hers. The hall was no longer a sanctuary of wealth and whispers. It had become a courtroom, and every phone raised was a jury seat. The patriarch slammed his glass onto the nearest table. Crystal shattered, champagne spraying across linen like shards of accusation. His voice thundered, trying to claw back control. This charade ends now. Security, remove her immediately. But no guard moved. They had seen enough, and more importantly, they had seen the cameras. Their hesitation was a quiet rebellion, one that spread faster than the patriarch's rage. The younger man in the navy tuxedo stepped forward again, his arrogance fraying into desperation. She forged her way in. This entire gala is compromised because of her. Do you people not see that? A chorus of murmurs pushed back. A woman near the front table raised her phone high. I see a young woman being humiliated, and I see a family terrified the truth is being recorded. Applause broke scattered at first, then rolling, until claps echoed against marble walls. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough to tip the balance. The matriarch's face flushed crimson. Her voice cracked like a whip, but it no longer stung. You think this spectacle changes anything? We still own this city. One phone call, and every single one of you will regret siding with her. Her words hung heavy, but instead of silencing the room, they provoked it. Guests shifted, defiant. A man in a dark green suit stood tall. Number, what you're afraid of is that one phone call from her can undo you. The woman in yellow didn't smile, didn't gloat. She only lifted the phone closer, her tone precise, measured, like dictating history in real time. Third, party testimony logged. Power dynamics shifting, record the applause. The silver-haired patriarch barked again, but his voice was cracked now, laced with panic. This is slander. She's a nobody, a parasite clinging to rooms she doesn't deserve. A whoosh fell, not the hush of respect. The hush of witnesses watching someone bury themselves deeper with every word. The young woman raised her chin, her gaze slicing clean through his fury. She didn't shout. She didn't rush. She spoke into the silence, her voice steady as stone. Final note for the record. Hostile language confirmed. Witnesses present. Impact irreversible. And with that, the tide in the room was no longer turning. It had turned. The matriarch's hand trembled, her diamond bracelet jingling as if it, too, sensed the unraveling. Rage swelled in her chest, drowning reason. With a sudden lunge, she reached for the phone in the young woman's hand. Gasps tore through the hall. The attempt wasn't graceful, it was desperate, clawing, the act of someone losing grip on the stage they once commanded. The young woman pivoted smoothly, sidestepping the grab with the ease of someone who'd expected it. The phone never wavered. Her gaze locked on the matriarch, sharp, unflinching. Attempted seizure of evidence logged, timestamp recorded. The patriarch roared, veins rising on his neck. He slammed his fist against a chair, sending it skidding across the marble. Enough! You think your words carry weight? You are nothing here. But the cracks in his certainty were audible. His fury sounded less like power and more like panic. From the crowd, a guest shouted, "She didn't raise her voice once. You did." Another joined in louder. "She's not the problem, you are." The room shifted again. Chairs scraped back as people rose, not to leave, but to bear witness. Dozens of phones glowed, catching every frantic gesture of the family, every calm response from the woman in yellow. The younger man in the navy tuxedo made his move next. He stepped forward, close enough to invade her space, his voice low but venomous. "Put the phone down, walk away, or I'll make you." For the first time, the woman lowered the device from her ear. She held it at her side, her eyes never leaving his. Her voice was soft, yet it carved through the air. "Touch me again, and your name won't just be in tonight's recordings. It will be in tomorrow's termination papers." The words detonated in the silence. Murmurs erupted, followed by a wave of gasps. The man's smirk faltered. He looked around, suddenly aware of the dozens of cameras capturing his threat from every angle. He stepped back, muttering under his breath, but the damage was sealed. The matriarch tried to recover, forcing a laugh that rang hollow. "Look at her acting like she has power. She's a child playing dress-up in a world she doesn't understand." But no one laughed with her this time. The audience wasn't buying the performance anymore. The young woman raised her phone again, her tone clinical, final. Escalation reached physical threat. Crowd intervention noted. Control lost. And in that moment, it was undeniable. The family hadn't just crossed a line. They had destroyed it. The hall was vibrating now, not with music, but with tension. Every insult had piled into a mountain of evidence. Every phone in the audience a witness. The family stood cornered, but their arrogance kept them striking, like wounded predators unwilling to yield. The woman in yellow, however, never wavered. She lifted the phone back to her ear, voice calm enough to cut against the storm. "Dad, it's time." The words landed like thunder muffled beneath velvet. A few nearby guests exchanged startled looks. "Dad?" Their whispers spread like sparks, jumping from one table to the next. On the other end of the line, the voice was low, deliberate, steady enough to still her shoulders. "Everything's logged. The deal's waiting on my word. Do you want me to pull it now?" She exhaled slowly, her gaze sweeping the family who had mocked her. The matriarch's smirk twitched, faltered. The patriarch leaned in, confusion warring with denial. "Who are you calling?" he barked. "No one who matters is picking up for you." The young woman tilted her head, eyes glinting like steel catching light. They already did. The waiter's phone zoomed closer, recording every syllable. The audience was no longer whispering, they were murmuring openly, connecting dots, speculating, realizing. The patriarch's voice grew frantic. "You're bluffing. This is smoke, nothing more. Do you think you can ruin a family like ours with a single call?" Her response was quiet, but it hit harder than any shout. One call is all it takes when it cancels $750 million. Gasps exploded. A wine glass slipped from someone's hand, shattering like punctuation. The matriarch's face drained of color. She staggered half a step, then steadied herself on the back of a chair. No, you don't mean..." The young woman raised the phone slightly, loud enough for the microphone to carry across the room. "Terminate the agreement. Effective immediately." Her father's voice was resolute on the other end, carried just faintly but enough for the crowd to hear. "Confirmed. Deal canceled." The words detonated through the gala, silencing every whisper, every laugh. The billionaire family froze in place as if shackled by invisible chains. Phones around the hall captured the exact second their empire cracked. The woman in yellow didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply lowered the phone, her eyes fixed on them with unshakable calm. "And for the record," she said evenly, "this is only the beginning." The balance of power had shifted, permanently. For a long beat, the gala stood frozen like a photograph suspended in time. The only sound was the faint hum of phones recording, the silent glow of 100 lenses capturing every detail. Then the young woman in yellow lifted her chin and spoke, her words slow, deliberate, cutting through the hush like a verdict. "You mocked me in this room. You told me I didn't belong. But I am not just a guest." She paused, letting the silence lean in, all eyes fixed on her, waiting for the blade to drop. "I am the daughter of the man who funds this institution. The black CEO whose company owns the very contract your family begged to close." The ripple was instant. Gasps, shouts, the rustle of disbelief across velvet chairs and polished floors. Some guests stood, their hands over their mouths. Others clapped once in shock, then again, until applause rolled through the room like thunder breaking chains. The patriarch's face collapsed, his mouth opened, but no sound came. The matriarch swayed, as if the weight of her diamonds had turned to lead. Their heirs, once smug, looked small boys caught stealing, not men in control. And then the doors of the atrium opened. A tall figure stepped inside, Black suit, no tie, no theatrics. His presence was quiet, but it swallowed the hall whole. The black CEO himself, her father. Conversations died instantly. Phones pivoted. Every whisper, every camera now caught him walking forward, unhurried, each step echoing like a gavel strike. The matriarch tried to recover, forcing a trembling smile. This is a misunderstanding. We didn't know she was your... He cut her off with a glance sharper than steel. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of it landed like a hammer. You knew exactly what you were doing, and now everyone else knows too. The patriarch's hands shook. He reached out, pleading. We've been partners for years. This deal, it means stability. Don't let one scene destroy that. The CEO stopped beside his daughter, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. His words came like a final judgment. It's already destroyed, not by her, by you. Applause thundered again, louder this time, rising from every corner of the hall. Guests stood in unison, some clapping, some recording, some simply nodding with fierce satisfaction. The family that once towered over the room now looked cornered, diminished, exposed. And at the center, the young woman in yellow didn't gloat, didn't flinch. She simply stood anchored beside her father, the calm eye of a storm that had just rewritten the night. Panic doesn't arrive politely. It crashes. The patriarch's face flushed crimson, his hands gripping the back of a chair like a man drowning and clawing for driftwood. His voice cracked, no longer booming, but shrill. This isn't official. Nothing signed. The deal can still stand. But the words sounded less like conviction and more like begging. The matriarch stepped forward, her diamonds rattling against her collarbone as she tried to steady herself. Her smile was brittle glass. We've given millions to this museum. We've hosted galas. We've supported this can't just vanish over her. She jabbed a shaking finger toward the woman in yellow. Gasps erupted. Phones zoomed closer, capturing every twitch, every venom-laced syllable. No, a voice rang out from the crowd. It was the man in the green suit who had spoken earlier. His voice was iron now. It vanished because of you, because you showed the world exactly who you are. Applause broke again, harder, more unified. The sound drowned the matriarch's protest, pressing her back against the table like a wave pushing debris to shore. The heirs, once smirking and smug, stood pale and stiff. One of them muttered to his brother, "This is going viral already." His phone buzzed in his pocket, messages flooding in before the night was even over. The CEO spoke at last. His voice didn't rise, yet every syllable reverberated through marble and bone. Tonight was supposed to be about art, about legacy, but your family made it about arrogance. The patriarch stammered, reaching out again. We can fix this. We can apologize. Issue a statement. The deal can be saved." But the young woman in yellow stepped forward before her father could answer, her gaze locked on the family, unwavering. You don't get to erase what everyone here saw, what they recorded, what they felt. This isn't just a deal ending. This is a reckoning. Gasps turned into cheers. Some guests rose to their feet, clapping, others chanting, "Justice, justice," as the sound bounced like fire through the grand hall. The matriarch tried one final gambit, shouting above the noise, "You'll regret this. You can't humiliate us and walk away. Our name still means something." But the young woman cut her down with one line, sharp and final. "Your name used to mean power. After tonight, it only means prejudice." The roar of the crowd swallowed the family whole. Phones captured their collapse in real time, faces drained, posture broken, their empire crumbling not behind closed doors, but here, in public, under a chandelier's unblinking light. They weren't untouchable anymore. They were history in the making unmade. The air shifted. The applause quieted. But it didn't vanish. It transformed into anticipation. A hall full of witnesses waiting for the verdict. The black CEO stepped forward, his presence alone commanding the silence. His gaze swept the family that had mocked his daughter, then the rows of guests still standing with phones aloft. His words came measured, deliberate, every syllable designed to leave no escape. As of this moment, the $750 million agreement with your family is terminated, irrevocably. All negotiations are void, effective immediately. Gasps detonated. Some guests clapped outright, unable to contain the surge of justice rolling through them. Others whispered in disbelief, as if trying to process the scale of what had just been undone with a single sentence. The patriarch staggered, gripping the tablecloth for balance. No, you can't. You can't do that. We had terms. We had contracts. The CEO's voice was low but unflinching. You had respect, and you destroyed it. Ugh. He raised his hand slightly, and a woman in a tailored suit, his general counsel, who had been waiting at the edge of the hall, stepped forward, tablet in hand. Termination papers have already been executed, she announced crisply. Accounts locked. Access revoked. The matriarch's knees buckled. She caught herself on a chair, her diamonds clattering like chains against marble. Please, not like this. Not in front of everyone. But the audience wasn't sympathetic. Phones recorded from every angle. Some guests were smiling, nodding, even clapping in rhythm now. A chorus of vindication swelling louder with every second. The young woman in yellow turned her gaze toward the family, her voice calm, almost clinical. Timestamp. Contract terminated. Witness confirmation secured. Public impact irreversible. One of the heirs tried to protest, his words frantic. We'll sue. This is slander. The lawyer's voice cut him down instantly. You'll find no standing. Your signatures are worthless now. Applause erupted full, thunderous, undeniable. Guests stood, chairs scraping back in unison, the sound of justice echoing like a gavel strike. The family shrank beneath the weight of it. The patriarch sank into his chair, face pale, hands trembling. The matriarch stared at the chandelier as if searching for an escape. The heirs looked at one another with the hollow eyes of those who realized they had inherited only disgrace. The CEO placed a steady hand on his daughter's shoulder, his voice carrying across the hall like the final blow. No one humiliates my family and walks away untouched. Tonight, the world sees where true power lives. And the crowd roared its agreement. The gala was no longer a celebration. It was a tribunal. Applause rolled through the marble hall like waves pounding a cliffside, furious, unrelenting, unstoppable. Guests who had once whispered quietly over champagne now stood shoulder to shoulder, clapping, cheering, chanting as if history itself had chosen this room to break open. At the center, the billionaire family crumbled. The patriarch, once the voice of booming authority, sat slumped, his body folded into the chair like a man decades older than he was. His fists gripped the edge of the linen tablecloth until it bunched under his knuckles, but no words came. Every attempt to speak drowned beneath the sound of applause. His empire wasn't gone in secret, it was stripped from him under chandeliers, in front of every witness, every camera. The matriarch fared no better. She forced a smile that looked more like a grimace, her diamonds rattling against her collarbone as though mocking her with every movement. She leaned toward her husband, whispering frantically, but her words were lost in the thunder. To the crowd, she was no longer the untouchable host. She was a woman cornered, her arrogance dissolved into desperation. Their heirs, those smug faces from minutes ago, were pale now, hollow-eyed, clinging to fragments of a reputation already collapsing. One stared at the floor, refusing to look up. Another muttered to his brother, "This is everywhere already. My phone messages, tags, it's gone viral." His words, half panicked, half resigned, were caught by a nearby microphone and instantly folded into the narrative of their downfall. The crowd wasn't done. Voices rose between the applause, sharp and searing. "Shame. You called her nothing. Look who's nothing now. This is justice." A woman in a crimson gown turned to the waiter who had bravely filmed from the start. She clapped with one hand and placed the other firmly on his shoulder, her voice raised so those around her could hear. "You did the right thing. You showed the world. None of this could be denied now." The waiter, his face still pale but his hand steady, nodded. His phone light glowed red. "Every second is recorded. They can't erase this. Not anymore." The billionaire family flinched at those words, recorded as though the very concept burned. For decades, they had thrived in whispers, in quiet rooms where money muffled consequence. Tonight, silence betrayed them. Cameras had replaced courtiers. Witnesses had replaced servants. And the crowd, once their audience, had become their accusers. At the center of it all, the young woman in yellow stood anchored, her shoulders squared, her breath calm. She didn't soak in the applause. She didn't gloat. Her eyes stayed fixed on the family who had tried to erase her. And her voice, when it came, was steady, deliberate, cold as a judge's gavel. Final phase logged. Crowd response unanimous. Reputation collapse irreversible. Phones caught every word, beams of light bouncing off marble, ensuring her calm testimony would echo across platforms before dawn. The black CEO stood beside her, silent but colossal, his presence alone commanding the respect the family could never buy back. He didn't need to speak. His hand, resting on his daughter's shoulder, spoke volumes. Power didn't scream, it stood steady. The matriarch rose suddenly, her composure shattering into a scream. "Stop filming us! This is harassment! We'll sue every single one of you!" Her voice ricocheted through the hall, shrill, desperate, and then drowned in a wall of laughter. Not cruel laughter, but incredulous, collective disbelief. The crowd wasn't afraid anymore. They had witnessed the truth, and truth gave them courage. Someone shouted back, "You can't sue reality!" Another chimed in, "Try suing justice!" The patriarch buried his face in his hands. The heirs stared blankly, their wealth powerless against the tide rising around them. The applause surged again, louder, harder. People clapped until their palms stung, some pounding fists on tables, others raising their phones like torches in a stadium. It wasn't just noise, it was a verdict, one the family couldn't appeal. And in that marble hall, under glittering chandeliers and endless recording lights, the billionaire family learned the one truth money could never buy back: respect. The moment belonged to the woman in yellow, and to every witness who stood with her. The ovation rolled through the hall like thunder trapped beneath crystal domes. It wasn't polite applause anymore, it was raw, visceral, a release of every gasp, every withheld breath from the last half hour. When it finally ebbed, silence fell sharp and absolute. All that remained was the sound of cameras whirring, fingers tapping, the quiet hum of history being recorded. The billionaire family sat defeated, their empire bleeding out in the open. The patriarch's shoulders sagged, his head bowed, his voice cracked. "This can't be the end. We've built too much. Decades of power, undone by one girl." The black CEO stepped forward. His presence was gravity itself, pulling every gaze. His voice was low, unhurried, yet heavy enough to nail the words into marble. "Not undone by her, undone by you, by your arrogance, by your belief that wealth excused cruelty. Tonight, you faced something money can't silence: the truth." The matriarch trembled. "Please, this humiliation, spare us. We can repair this." In private, away from, his hand cut through the air, dismissive. "Number, you chose public humiliation, and so the ending is public too." Gasps rippled again. Phones zoomed tighter. This was no longer just a collapse. It was a spectacle broadcast justice. Then the young woman in yellow stepped forward, her voice steady, controlled, cutting through the silence like steel drawn from its sheath. "You told me I didn't belong. You laughed at me. You tried to erase me. And yet here I stand while your legacy crumbles in seconds." Her words didn't rise above the crowd. They didn't need to. They sank in deeper because they were calm, because they carried the weight of inevitability. The audience roared. Some clapped, some shouted, some stood on chairs just to record her face as she delivered the line. The family shrank further, eyes darting, their names already dissolving into shame. The CEO rested his hand on his daughter's shoulder. His closing words weren't shouted, they were etched. "Justice doesn't need volume, it needs presence. Tonight, my daughter proved presence is louder than prejudice." The hall exploded. Cheers shook the chandeliers. The family disappeared into irrelevance before the crowd's very eyes. And as father and daughter walked toward the doors, the woman turned once more, her final words quiet enough to hush the room, devastating enough to seal the night. "You thought I was invisible. But from this moment on, you'll never escape being seen for what you are." The doors closed. The gala wasn't remembered for its art. It was remembered for its justice.